In 300 BC, a highly prosperous businessman named Zeno resided in the capital of Cyprus. All of his belongings perished in the sinking of his boat when he was traveling from Phoenicia to Piraeus. This extremely rich man went from being affluent to being impoverished in an instant due to a single incident that was completely beyond any control, either Zeno's or anyone else's. Assume the role of Zeno. How would you respond if the forces of nature swept away all you've worked for your whole life? What is the appropriate response? Would you feel enraged, depressing? Do you think you've been let down by life? These would all be considered typical responses for most people, but not for Zeno, the father of Stoicism. One tiny shift has a lasting effect, and over time, smaller, more profound shifts can result from changing your perspective. The fundamental concept of acceptance and apathy is at the heart of Stoicism. Following his readings of Socrates and other great philosophers' writings, Zeno developed and imparted Stoicism. Zeno argues that although we have little influence over the events in our lives, we do have control over how they impact us, and we must make the most of this power. Rather than crying over spilled milk, or in this instance drowned products, Zeno concentrated on being cool and impartial in the face of his circumstance. Individuals now mistake Stoics for individuals who can't be broken, for people who don't often veer into emotional extremes such as outbursts of fury or episodes of worry. However, the original concept of Stoicism was far more than that. Stoicism was more than simply a means to characterize emotionless individuals. It was a technique to see, explain, and comprehend the universe. It was a way of life, and it has persisted for ages. Stoic philosophy may be applied to current problems in the same way it did thousands of years ago, and the advantages are just as powerful. Stoicism enables us to digest unpleasant emotions resulting from terrible events and transform them into concepts that provide us with a unique perspective on the world. Everyone in the world has various experiences and consequently varied viewpoints on things, so perspective is crucial. Because the Stoics met, talked, and taught philosophy in public, their general philosophy was well known. They thought that Stoic ideals could help each and every one. Thus, it made no sense to keep such information hidden behind the four walls of a school or the royal courts. As a result, everyone from a slave to the emperor might learn and become a Stoic, and many did. Some of the world's most famous Stoics include Epictetus, whose name means acquired, since he was originally a slave, Seneca, a well-known senator, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the most powerful men who ever lived. The early Stoics lived what they preached, opposing all forms of segregation and taking the lead in the struggle against inequality. They even coined the term cosmopolitan, which literally means world citizen. Because of how varied cities like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London are when we hear that phrase now, we think of this form of harmony and togetherness the Stoics preached. Women were not allowed to study philosophy during the time of Stoicism's founding, although Stoics strongly objected. Epictetus's tutor, Musonius Rufus, allegedly stated, "It is not only men who possess eagerness and a natural inclination towards virtue, but also women. Women, like men, are gratified by noble and just deeds and reject the reverse. Since that is the case, why is it okay for males to seek out and explore how they may live well, i.e. to practice philosophy, but not for women?" Women were able to freely study about Stoicism and become Stoics even when it was not popular. So, what is it about Stoicism that attracts so many people? In a world full of unexpected twists and turns, our emotions might get in the way of things. In actuality, We are unhappy because unexpected awful things happen to us, not because bad things happen to us. Rain is beneficial. It helps to hydrate our plants, supplies water for cattle, and maintains a cool and humid environment. However, when a heavy cloud catches you outside without an umbrella, it is never a pleasant experience. So, why don't we start sobbing as soon as it begins raining? It's because, despite the dire circumstances, we've come to expect rain. It's inescapable. We can't control the weather. Despite how bad it seems, the rain passes and the light returns. Stoicism tells us that we should anticipate everything awful that may happen to happen. Consider the worst-case scenario and accept that it is possible. Voluntary discomfort is a Stoic activity intended at fostering sentiments of thankfulness. Sleep on the floor of your kitchen, take cold showers instead of hot ones, eat nothing but potatoes for a few days, and other such things. This exercise teaches you that no matter how difficult things become, if you have the appropriate mentality, you will survive and maybe flourish. We indirectly prepare our minds for future calamities by being able to bear these difficult events. With the present condition of the world, where advertising are continuously rammed down our throats, we're led to feel that if we don't have the next greatest thing, look a particular way, or make a certain amount of money, we'll never be happy. Therefore, this message is more vital than ever. We enter the world knowing very little. We learn things at home, at school, and by experiencing the world for ourselves as we grow older. The trouble is, all three of these sources of knowledge frequently educate us in distinct ways. Is it necessary to assimilate all of this knowledge? If we do, we may unwittingly create unreasonable expectations for ourselves, leaving us disillusioned and dissatisfied in the end. That is not the way to live. Instead, we should concentrate on bettering ourselves. For ourselves. We should act for ourselves and solely for ourselves. Attaching any external hope. Secondary attachments to our activities almost always leads to disappointment. The majority of the time, we end up attempting to fill that void with external items, spending all of your money on a flashy automobile, a new home, or even raising a family. Sometimes we perform all of these activities for the sake of their exterior worth rather than their inside value. However, Stoicism teaches that if you approach life in this manner, you leave your happiness in the hands of external forces, which can always fail. Cars virtually always break down, natural disasters wipe off entire cities, and divorce rates continue to rise year after year. However, even the free things in life have a cost, the physical and psychic costs of space. When it comes to Seneca's words, learning to live with less will create space in your life for the things that truly matter to you. Instead, we must base our pleasure on our inherent worth as individuals rather than on anything we have or may physically obtain. We must choose to try our best to have a level head no matter what life throws at us. Because, regardless of what we want, we have no control over the bulk of the things that happen to us, but we do have complete power over how we react to those situations. That is the most crucial premise in Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. In the immortal words of Epictetus, the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself, which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Stoics argue that we must learn to distinguish between what we can and cannot control. We must establish our worth based on what we can control rather than what we cannot. Striving for objectives is a commendable attribute, but breaking down when things don't go your way is, according to the Stoics, pointless. Making YouTube films is a lot simpler than becoming a Roman emperor, but it may still be difficult at times. You must first construct your concept, which takes a long, then study that idea, discard it because it stinks, start over, script the video, create the video, edit it, make the thumbnail, title, and everything else before hitting upload. Everything up until the point where you click upload is all up to you. However, once you click the upload button, the power shifts to the YouTube algorithm. Nonetheless, many individuals measure the success of their YouTube channel or Instagram account primarily on the number of views, subscribers, or followers they have, indicators that are, for the most part, out of their control. Stoics taught that the amount of effort you put in, rather than the outcome of your external hopes, should be used to measure the success of your labor. Believe in the process. Living with less entails freeing yourself from the cultural restraints you've effectively placed on yourself. Consider a person who has been putting in long hours at their job for the previous 6 months. He now believes he is deserving of a promotion and approaches his employer with his performance report. The employer appreciates him but denies him the promotion, and he walks home certain that he is a failure at his job. He doesn't examine the possibility that the boss just awoke furious, that someone else was better suited at the time, or that the firm was simply losing money and couldn't afford it. He has no idea why he is unhappy, but he is. He might have been considerably happy overall if he had just placed his value on the quality of the performance report he gave in and maintained doing what he was doing to obtain the promotion he desired. With the correct frame of mind, his aim would not have been decreased, but only postponed. It is critical that you reframe your mentality. A real Stoic does not measure their success by the amount of money they make, but rather by the fact that they can live a pleasant life without all the luxuries money can buy. Stoicism's 4 basic qualities are wisdom, bravery, temperance, and justice. Wisdom is the capacity to distinguish between what is internal and what is external, as well as the ability to select our attitude to what happens to us. There is a space between stimulus and response, observed Viktor Frankl. In that area, we have the ability to pick our reaction. Persist and resist are 2 terms that describe courage. I just shown temperance or moderation by accomplishing more with less and speaking more with fewer words. While Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk vie for the top spot on Forbes' list, Stoics think that the limit of riches should simply be having what is necessary, followed by having what is sufficient. The virtue of justice is the most essential of all. It teaches that no one should bring damage to another, since we were all created for one other, to do good to one another rather than to ourselves. Nelson Mandela was one of the world's most well-known African leaders. While battling apartheid, he was condemned to life in jail, where he remained for 27 years before being freed. When he was freed from jail, he was elected president of South Africa, and many people expected him to severely punish everybody who had anything to do with apartheid or his imprisonment, but he did not. During his time in jail, Mandela read Marcus Aurelius's books and learnt many of the essential ideas of Stoicism, which he practiced throughout his life. Instead of demanding the heads of wrongdoers, Nelson Mandela pushed his followers to pursue the reverse, to unwind and rebuild. He emphasized that they could no longer control the past and that the only thing they could do was find a way to go forward and build a better nation. This is the Stoic way of life. Stoicism lies at the heart of current medical techniques such as rational emotive behavioral therapy and logotherapy. REBT assists patients in identifying negative thinking patterns that may be causing emotional and behavioral problems. It enables you to use logic to test the reasoning behind all of these negative attitudes, and once you understand that many of them are false, you can replace them with more productive and healthy beliefs. Logotherapy, on the other hand, is founded on the Stoic notion that humans are motivated by a sense of purpose. Even in the worst of circumstances, we may find meaning and satisfaction in our life by just discovering what that purpose is. However, as many of us are aware, this is easier said than done. It is, like everything else, a process. We need to rewire our brains, out with the old, in with the new. To solve our happiness difficulties, we must exercise self-worth. By shifting our concept of worth to things we can control, we can avoid being obsessed on things we can't, and we can live a lot happier and more satisfying life overall. Stoicism assists us in navigating past and present storms into calmer and more serene waters. And even if our ship sinks and we all drown, we may find satisfaction by just figuring out what that mission is. However, as many of us are aware, this is easier said than done. It is, like everything else, a process. We need to rewire our thinking, out with the old, in with the new. To solve our happiness difficulties, we must exercise self-worth. By shifting our concept of worth to things we can control, we can avoid being obsessed on things we can't, and we can live a lot happier and more satisfying life overall. Stoicism assists us in navigating past and present storms into calmer and more serene waters. And if our ship collapses and we all perish, we may take comfort in knowing that we lived a decent life, although one that was not as long as we had anticipated. Because, as we all know, everything has an end.